Alrighty, welcome to the next section of our agricultural unit. This is 5.4. So today we're looking at the second agricultural revolution. So this is like the 18th to 19th century, so like late 1700s, 1800s, and then kind of tapering off into the 1900s. And then we'll get into the Green Revolution in the next one, which is like mid 1900s. So kind of get a little timeline here. All right, so let's take a look real quick. Here's our enduring understanding. Agriculture has definitely changed over time because of cultural diffusion and advances in technology. So we're going to see a lot of that technology in this section. So here's the goal for this lesson. New technology and increased food production. The second agricultural revolution led to better diets, longer life expectancies, and more people available for work in factories. And so here's kind of the gist of it. They were able through technology. They were able to grow a whole lot more food with a lot less labor. And so now that you have a lot fewer people who need to work on the farm, they can go and work in factories, and then that advances society in other areas as well. And so you start to see huge spikes. They call it a hockey stick curve, and we'll look at some of them. And that is, things kind of trend for a little while, and then something big happens, and then you have a big spike. And so, like life expectancies and stuff like that, population would be hockey stick curves. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get started. When we talk about the second agricultural revolution, there are some new things that were introduced. So we have crop rotation. And so we know that if you plant the same crop in the same space over and over and over and over and over again, then it depletes the nutrients from the soil and the crops get less productive. And so crop rotation is, let's say this is our field. We kind of break it up. And so you might plant this one for a year or two and then switch it over here. And you can either plant something new here or just let that field rest. All right. And so you kind of keep going back and forth. And by the time this crop comes back around, the soil is good for that. And so that's what we mean by crop rotation. Selective breeding of livestock. So you're just breeding for the type of livestock that you want, you know, uh, just better suited for humans. So those things led to an increase in agricultural production, and so we do also see this correlation with the Industrial Revolution and the massive population growth. So this agricultural revolution happened in tandem. So through the agricultural revolution, it has allowed this massive population growth to occur. All right, and so just real quick, the origins. This goes back to Great Britain in the 18th century. There is this connection definitely to the Industrial Revolution. The location of these things matter. And so we look at it in Europe and then in the US. This happened a lot where power sources were like water power and things like that. But anyway, that's some history stuff as well. And so, anyway, the biggest thing I want you to think about with the second agricultural revolution is how did technology advance the agricultural revolution? So, this is a lot about technology. All righty. We're using our brains. Now, the other big thing that happened around this time is the privatization of land in bigger parts of, of society. And so here's why privatization of land is a big deal. So there's this thing called the tragedy of the commons. And by commons, we just mean things that nobody owns. Okay. And so let's say that this is our pasture. This would be a common area. And so anybody could bring their cows to this pasture and they could let their cows graze on this pasture. And so if nobody owns it, here's kind of what happens. So, this pasture has what they call a certain carrying capacity. It's like how many cows can graze on this before it depletes the resources. And so the problem is when you have a common resource, there's no big incentive for any one individual to take care of it. And so a farmer may say, look, we're going to send our cows over here to this pasture because it's good. And other farmers from around the area are going to say, yeah, this is, let's all send our cows there. And at some point, you end up with way too many cows and it depletes the pasture and kills it. It's not sustainable, right? And so by privatizing land, so let's say we cut this up. And so now we have four farmers, we'll just say, since that's a one there, 2, 3, and 4. Did it kind of backwards there, and so let's say that you're this farmer here. You're only going to put the number of cows on here that will keep it to where it's sustainable in the future, right? You have an interest yourself. So generally when people own property, they tend to take better care of it. And so if you're this farmer that owns this plot, you're going to make sure that this plot is not overworked. All right. And so same over here. And so by establishing land rights, private property rights, this land tends to become more productive and sustainable. All right. And so that was one of the big issues that privatization of land solved, and that is the tragedy of the commons. And again, commons just means that it's something that nobody owns, and the tragedy is that people will abuse it. And if I ever have you for economics, the Lorax by Dr. Seuss is all about the tragedy of the commons. It's an economics book. It's a great economics book. So anyway, so you can see over here, so privatization of land, it does solve the tragedy of the commons. It gives people an incentive to produce more and to take better care of the land. Remember, generally people take better care of the stuff they own than the stuff they don't. All right, there are always exceptions, but yields tend to increase there. People practice crop rotation, and so all those things have this huge benefit in terms of agricultural productivity. And the other big thing that came around this time was the creation of bigger markets. All right, and so trade increased, new markets to sell in, which leads to this thing called economies of scale. And we'll get more into this. That just means that the bigger a farm gets, or this applies to any business, but generally the bigger the business gets, the cheaper it is to produce per unit, because you can buy all these really cool big machines that we're about to see, which is really fun. But anyway, so the economies of scale has helped increase GDP. That's just their economy. Gross domestic product just measures the size of the economy, economic growth, and urbanization. So, when we talk about the second agricultural revolution, we start to see this trend that has continued up to today. Alrighty. So let's take a look at some of the agricultural advancements. Now, one thing I want to make clear is that what I've done is shown you the agricultural advancement from the second agricultural revolution here on the left, and I've combined that with often the green revolution, which is the next section over here on the right. All right, and so we're going to see, the introduction of a steel plow. That was part of the second agricultural revolution, and it greatly increased crops. And then, just since we're kind of doing these side by side, I wanted to show you what the modern day is. All right, and so this would be the green revolution up through possibly our fourth agricultural revolution, because sometimes now we get, started that. We're not going to watch the whole parts of these videos, by the way. But when we talk about these new tractors, if you remember that video we watched on how they make a t-shirt, the cotton farmer, the guy who was in the tractor, he wasn't even driving because GPS was. And so we have technology now, and so we are kind of blending the green revolution and going into today, possibly the fourth agricultural revolution. So anyway, I do want to make that clear that as we look at these new inventions, the second agricultural revolution will be generally the one on the left, and I'll point these out. And then this is where we're at today. And so I just wanted you to kind of see the progression that, we're going from before a machine, then to the second revolution, agricultural revolution, which showed us a machine. And now I wanted you to see where those machines had evolved to today. All right. And so let's take a look. So the first plow. Oh yeah, the music is awesome. So I wanted you to see, let me see if I can find where it is, just what it was like to plow back then. All right. So you hook it up to the horse. Here we go.
Oh, good boy. Push on the right. Now come back on the left a bit. I'm pretty impressed already, Steve. What, left a little bit. You want about 8 inches or so?
I'm going.
Okay, so that was the invention from the second agricultural revolution. And you can imagine if you were doing this stuff by hand, and now you have this horse, pulled plow, that's a huge advancement. So you can see how one individual farmer could do a lot more acreage. So then we get over here. This is modern plowing. All right, let me just see if I can. That's kind of loud. There we go. So you can see, so when we're talking about, productivity per farmer, and we have, before any plows were invented, We had the productivity of one individual farmer, and then we have the steel plow gets invented when the productivity goes up. And so now, since this farmer can farm what he can, he doesn't need as many workers, and so those workers can go work in the factories. And then think about this person. You know, they are plowing up all this land super fast, so they need even fewer workers. And so now even more people can go do other stuff besides agriculture. All right. And so that's kind of the idea there. Again, I just want you to see the video clips real quick. So another one is what they call a reaper or a harvester. All right. And so this is a way to gather the crops quickly. So this is 170-year-old McCormick Reaper demonstrations. So again, before this, they would have to do all this by hand. So this is the second agricultural revolution over here. Let's see if I can write it down. There it is. So this is second agricultural revolution. And then this is the green revolution into the fourth, okay? And so we had that example, and now we have this. Let's see if I can speed that up. So you can see what happens here. So they just, it's an incredible amount. All right, so, you know, think about, again, the productivity of one worker. And this is what we mean by economies of scale, by the way. These machines are tremendously expensive, but when we talk about like a bushel of wheat, you know, the per unit cost of doing a bushel of wheat goes way down when you can do this versus this guy over here who was doing it, you know, with a horse. And so you can kind of see the genesis of going from nothing to having the machine, and then where we're at today with these machines. And again, this is the visual look at what the difference in scale is. So economies of scale over here is what's going on. All right, so that's called a reaper or a harvester. So it allows you to gather the crops a lot more quickly. All right, next one, a seed drill. So this would be our first seed drill here. This just allows you to go along the rows and plant seeds at a certain depth and then cover them back up. I don't have a video of the early seed drill, but you can kind of get the idea there. Let's take a look. So this is what a modern day seed drill looks like. And so they just drive this along. You put the seeds up in here, they get distributed out here, and then it gets planted at a depth. And so you can plant a field a lot faster. So let me see if I can speed this one up a little bit. Come on, play. So that's where the seeds are going in. And then they can take off in the tractor. And so now they're just planting, they're planting this entire field. And imagine, so remember, this is our second agricultural revolution here, and this gets into our green revolution and beyond here. All right, and so you can imagine how long it would take to plant a field, first by hand, take forever, plant a field with this thing, take less time, and then plant a field with this machine a lot less time. All right, and so you can see how food production has gone way up and individual farm worker productivity has gone way up, and how we've needed a lot fewer workers to do the farming now. All right, so that's a seed drill. That was another invention back then. This is grain elevators. All right, and so this is just showing how they work. I'm not going to show this whole thing. So they would show up in a truck. So this is actually more of green revolution. So I apologize for that. Just threw it in here. This was all the new agricultural technology. So a grain elevator, you drive your truck in, it dumps the seed down here. This elevator, who's going to flip it on in a minute, it will pile it up and put it in this big silo, and then it can be distributed later on. Let me see if I can fast forward this a little bit. So you can see this thing starts pulling it all up and it fills up the silo. This is neat. I love this stuff. But anyway, I don't want to keep you too long. And so then all the grain gets put in there. Then when they ship it out, so it's in here when they ship it out, sorry. Play. So it'll dump down here, then they'll put it in this other part, and then it will go into a train car, basically. All right, let me see if I can fast forward to that. So again, we're talking about, so they dumped it out there, then they put it in that silo or that elevator, and then it goes into the grain car. So anyway, so that would be again more of a green revolution thing. But all right, so let's take a look. So this is 1927. So again, this graph, let me just write it on here. This one shouldn't be in here. It should be in the other one. This is green revolution stuff. All right, not second, although it would apply similarly, but not second. But you can see, so when we talk about the number of planted acres, and again, this is just like technology, so our number of planted acres has stayed relatively the same. But if you look at the bushels per acre, and this would have applied in part to the second agricultural revolution as well, but you can see the bushels per acre, so our productivity per acre is going up. And so this is 1927. This is a little bit before the Green Revolution. So this is the tail end of the second agricultural revolution. And then you can see it start to spike up a lot. All right. So here is kind of from the second agricultural revolution to today, right? And so, whoops. So this is long-term wheat yields in Europe, 1850 to 2014. So you can see, so here's the beginning of our second or agricultural revolution and industrial revolution. And so the yields start to go up. So we definitely see an upward trend here. And then we have, the green revolution kind of kicks off in here with better mechanization. So this line starts to kick up a bit, and then it starts to go way up. And so this is in part from the green revolution as well. All right, and then this blends into what we're into today with technology. And so you can kind of see a very, very much more smooth trend. This could just be a data collection thing as well. So anyway, you get the idea. So wheat yields are going up there. Per capita calories, supply of calories. And so, how many calories are available to people? And that's a big deal because obviously you need them to survive. And so you can see what's happened to the amount of calories per person. From 1700, we were down here, and now we are up in this area. So a doubling of calories at least. All right. And then, so the question is, so what? Who cares about all of that? And here's the so what. Life expectancy takes off. And so you can see in 1543, so 1600, average life expectancy was 40 years old. Then we get to here. This is where the second agricultural revolution and industrial revolution are really taking off. And so you can see what happens to life expectancy. And that's the so what. Why does all this matter? I'd be dead if this hadn't happened. All right. Barely over 40. Joke there, but you get the idea, that through this technology, then we've had these big life expectancy things. Now, here's the other part, and this is an extremely important part of this for the second industrial revolution. Hang on, let me get rid of this real quick. Hide. All right, so we're going from 1300, 1400 up until 2012, and so this is the share of the labor force working in agriculture. All right, and these are European countries, but this would apply to countries where the second and industrial revolutions happened, second agricultural revolution happened and industrial. So anyway, so you can see here in 1400, we'll just take, who's this? England. So 57% of their population worked in agriculture, and then today it's 1.2%. In the U.S., I think it's somewhere around 1% today. And so here's the so what for this one. So now that when we start to see, so here's our second agricultural revolution starting around here. And so you can see that we don't need as many farm workers because of the mechanization. And so instead of these people working on the farm, they go work in factories. All right. And so now they can produce all the other stuff. And so now that you have people who are freed up from, they're not tethered to the farm anymore, they can go and either work in factories, they can go invent new stuff to help make farm work easier and more efficient. And so this cyclical thing where one helps the other. And so by being able to produce more food with fewer farmers, we allow more people to go and invent things and work in factories that can help, in part, farmers become even more productive. And so it's kind of this cycle that goes around and around. But make sure you make that connection between the number of people who are needed in agriculture and the Industrial Revolution, because again, by freeing up people from not working on farms, they can go and work in all these factories. All right. So, and so we can see one of the big impacts here is on urbanization. And again, here's our second agricultural revolution, industrial revolution. And so once people are freed from farm work, they move into the cities. Remember, urbanization, just moving into cities, because that's where the factories are now. All right. And so once people are free from working on the farm, they generally move to the cities, and that's because that's where the work is. If you remember, again, the t-shirt video that we watched, the young woman in Bangladesh moved from a farm, a subsistence farm, into an urban area to work in that sewing factory, because that was the best option that she was able to find. All right, and so that's where the work is. And so these things are definitely highly connected. All right, so just in summary, we do have, with the second agricultural revolution, you do see this huge increase in food production. You see a change in the demand for manual labor. And so again, the demand for labor shifts from agriculture to factories. We do see a higher life expectancy. We have more food and a better quality food. So people's diets are much better off. All right. And then we do see an increased gap between most developed and less developed countries. And so, when we talk about this second agricultural and industrial revolution, they didn't take place in every single country in the world. All right. And so we do start to see this divergence between countries in terms of wealth and GDP. So, and that's something that we're dealing with today. All righty. So that's it. Our next video will be on the Green Revolution and all of those cool machines that I just showed you. All righty. So y'all take care and see you next time.